they don't do it. Maybe you put it at the 50-yard line or the 40-yard line and let them try it from there. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but this is the best they got, and it doesn't always produce the outcome you hope for by finding a winner, but, we'll see. And I don't think you can do that in baseball. I think you just got to play however many innings it takes to find a winner, and if it's 18, if you're playing that game on a Saturday, it's starting at 4 o'clock, then the game's over at, maybe 9 o'clock or whatever time it is, and it's much more reasonable to watch, and people are sitting in bars watching that game. But, here in the East, if that game ends at 3 in the morning, they're getting kicked out of bars at 2 in the morning. There's still no winner. And then what are you going to do, go home and turn on the television and sit there and watch the last hour of a baseball game? I mean, that's not a very good way to do business if you're the MLB.
Well, at the same time, though, guys, and we'll wrap it up because I know that you got to go. At the same time, we're talking about the MLB and the starting time. When you go 18 innings, you start the game at 8 o'clock. I mean, 18 innings is going to take a while to play.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you start them at 7. I know they want fans to come home and have dinner, but I just think you need to start these games a little bit more at a reasonable hour where kids are actually up, especially on weeknights where, kids have to get up for school. Teenage kids have to get up early to go to high school.
Yeah.
And, it just makes no sense that these games should be ending after midnight. It really doesn't.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you there. But on the flip side of it, though, if you look at the markets, they are out in L.A. If you start at 7 o'clock, that's 4 o'clock, and you look at L.A. traffic and people getting off work, it's going to hurt attendance and ticket sales, even if it is the World Series. Well, we'll leave it at that, and we'll make that the last word. Ed, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles, our official NFL contributor. Where can people find your work and your masterpieces, sir?
Yeah, check out my website. It's footballmaven.io/Eagles, and I have all my Eagles work there. Bookmark it, check it out from time to time, and leave me a comment. Let me know how you like it.
We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks. ed-kracz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles, joins us. Joining us now is Mo from the BS Sports Show. We're going to kind of get into these betting lines, and I'll have to admit, Mo, that site you sent me, my phone went dead, so I'm going to have to rely on just good old-fashioned other stuff that the spread may not be as accurate as it is, but at least it gets us to a point of conversation, if you will. So, Mo, let's talk a little bit, though, about Clemson and Florida State. Huge game. Big rivalry. Florida State has been on a roll since Kentucky. And so it looks like Florida State a plus 17. And I'm going to go, I don't know what these numbers mean, so I'm just going to kind of tell you what it says, and you tell me what it means. And Clemson minus 778. So we got Florida State plus 17 and Clemson minus 778.
Yeah, so that's breaking it down by quarter. If you're not an experienced bettor, trying to bet by quarters or halves is not the thing for you to do. So if you want, we can skip those numbers because honestly, if you haven't done it much, that's not the way to get started. It's do the stuff that you can figure out and you already know, and that's the best way to do it because those lines change as the game happens as well. So you've got to be really up on top of it if you're doing those. Clemson, Florida State has played better since Kentucky, but Clemson, they can be the roll stopper for a team like this because Clemson, still is no joke. They've struggled at times, but they've also just beat people's brains in too. Games with big point spreads are things normally that I stay away from, especially in college, just because there's so many variables. But for this game, I mean, if I was putting my money on it, and I wouldn't on this game, but if I was, I would take Clemson and give the points just because you would have to prove to me that Clemson is not that good, and man, the last couple of weeks they've played pretty darn good. So I would take Clemson, give the points, but not a game normally that I would put my money on.
So we're going to skip the actual betting odds. If they are a bettor, they can look it up online. We're just going to go through these games, and you just give me your thoughts on the game. While we still have a few minutes here. Let's go to the other Florida game. Now, this is going to be a big one. It's number 9 Florida against number 7 Georgia. Georgia Bulldogs are huge. They're down in I know it's I think it's in Orlando. Yeah, it's in Orlando. So the Florida Gators, huge. I mean, I'm sorry, I said Florida Gators. No, I was right, Florida Gators. And the number 7 Georgia Bulldogs. What are your thoughts?
Well, a lot of people have been trumpeting that Florida's back already, and they do have a talented squad. I don't know that this may be a little bit premature, but I don't think Florida's all the way back yet. Georgia, to me, still is just so good, both on offense and defense. I love Jake Fromm, the quarterback, as I've said here before. I think Georgia's still the better team. I think Florida is beginning to rebuild to be somebody really good again after a bunch of down years. I don't think they're there yet. I think Georgia, especially with being there last year in the playoffs, they know how big this game is. I think you see Georgia come out and just lay it on Florida early. I don't know that it's a game to where it's a game to where Georgia wins it big, but I think Georgia realizes what this means. I mean, obviously Florida does too, but I don't think Florida's all the way back yet. I think this is a game that Georgia wins.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got a big game in Annapolis today. The Navy against the midshipmen against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Obviously, Notre Dame undefeated, number 3, hoping to run the table. But certainly, it would be a huge win for both teams. But it would be a bigger loss for Notre Dame if they get beat by Navy today.
Yeah, for sure. And it was cool that it was announced coming up in a couple of years that they're going to be playing this game in Dublin, Ireland. So that'd be neat to look forward to in 2020. Yeah, I mean, and this has been a place to where, when Notre Dame has struggled in the past, they've lost dumb games, and, they did it just a few years back to Navy. Navy's still a fun team the way they run their offense, and it's going to be something I think a little different than Notre Dame's seen all year long. And the atmosphere there, I've been to a game in Annapolis, and the atmosphere at Navy is just unbelievable. So I think it's going to be big time. That Notre Dame comes out and establishes not only their offense really, but their defense. I think it takes an adjustment when you play one of these academy schools where they tend to run stuff that's non-traditional because they have to work with what they have for people who go to enroll in these academies. So I think it's important for Notre Dame to establish their defense early, so that they can handle the different looks they're going to have thrown at them. And obviously, I think it's going to be important that Notre Dame's going to be able to control their side of the ball on offense. They've got to get that running game going a little bit more, which opens that passing game for Book to throw the ball around the field, which he struggled with just a couple of weeks ago. So I look for Notre Dame to win this football game. Obviously, Notre Dame hasn't been ranked this high, and been looking at it in the college playoff picture for a little bit. So I think they realize, again, how important this game is. You've got, I think they found their quarterback, and I think this is Notre Dame victory.
Let's go over to the Big Ten here. Let's talk about Ohio State getting beat pretty handily, 49-20 against Purdue. Purdue, that was a big win for them. Certainly, I think that they're going to have to win out even to get considered to be in the playoffs. At the same time, they're going to probably end up playing them or Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. I think a lot of people think it's going to be Michigan and Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. Ohio State's got the bye this week, but man, when I tell you what, when you look at a loss like that, and if they get beat by Michigan, I mean, they've got to win out in order to even remotely considered to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely have to win out, but I think what could wind up happening is because, we talked about this even a year ago that, Jeff Brown has something special going on at Purdue, and, if Purdue winds up winning their half of the Big Ten Conference, the loss won't look as bad for Ohio State. But to me, there's been issues for Ohio State all year. Their offense has been able to make up for the deficiencies of their depleted defense. But, the problem is when you're not establishing a running game, when you're relying and living and dying by the pass, sooner or later that's going to come to bite you. And I think what you're going to see is other teams copying what Purdue did to beat this football team. I don't think that Ohio State wins out. I think they're going to suffer another loss at some point. And for this Purdue team, they were pretty incredible. I can't, not being a fan of either team, I can't remember a college football game that I've watched in recent memory to where I've been more emotionally invested in that football game, not just because of the Tyler Trent story, but just because of the gritty way that Purdue played it. I just wanted to watch them just keep scoring and scoring last week. It was such a great game to watch. But no, I think Ohio State's in trouble, and I really believe that should they not make the playoffs again and have a down year, I really believe you could see this be the last season that Urban Meyer is there.
I think that all along. I said that earlier in the show. This team looks a lot like the Florida team that Urban Meyer had in its last year. So we'll see what happens. Let's stick around in the Big Ten a little bit. You got number 18, number 17 number 18 Iowa. I'm sorry, at number 17 Penn State. We've seen how good Iowa is. Absolutely a very, very good football team. I think Penn State is very, very good at home. This is a game that Penn State should win, but at the same time, don't go to sleep on Iowa.
No, and what concerns me is how many points that the Penn State defense has continued to give up, numerous weeks in a row. They won the football game last week, but they should have never let, Indiana put those type of points on them. And it's no disrespect to Indiana, but, one of the things we counted on, I think, this year before the season started was, for Penn State's defense being a really good defense again. And, you look over the past 3 or 4 games, they've really let up a lot of points. So with this Iowa team, that would concern me if I'm a Penn State fan. It'll be interesting to see if Penn State got the ship righted after their win last week. I would say that Penn State wins this football game, but it's one of those ones that their defense just scares me. So I would say it's probably a Penn State win, but don't, like you said, don't sleep on Iowa.
Well, we'll see. We'll definitely see what happens. Let's go through some of these other games, if you will, and just kind of going through there quickly. Though, I want to get your thoughts on this West Virginia Mountaineers game. Beat over Baylor. They beat the shenanigans out of the Baylor Bears. Not that Baylor's that good, but did we really know how good the West Virginia Mountaineers are? I think we do, and I think that they've got to start getting a look when it comes to committee time.
Yeah, I think what they've got to do, the one thing that has hurt them is, the inconsistent play. They've laid beatings on people and then come out against the dog and win the game but look terrible for 3 quarters. So I think the one thing that's held West Virginia back the last couple of years is an untimely loss or just inconsistent play. I agree that there's a fun football team playing down in Morgantown, and I do think they should get more love. But they're a very, if you haven't watched them on TV yet, definitely watch this football team. They're a very fun football team to watch.
Well, yeah, they are. Absolutely. I totally agree. Let's talk about a big upset that could happen this week at Missouri. Kentucky is at Missouri. A lot of people like Kentucky, and if you're going with the favorite, go ahead and go with Kentucky. But if you're looking for an upset, there could be one right there. The Missouri Tigers could definitely upset the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah, Missouri's been quite a surprise. I think, over the past few years they've had guys that have left to go to the NFL or guys who have gotten in trouble. But I think that, this Missouri team was expected to kind of be a doormat for a while, and they just haven't laid down to do that. And you got to like that kind of fight in a football team. It is fun to see Kentucky playing so well after so many years of being a doormat in the SEC. I like the Kentucky Wildcats, but I think you're 100% correct that there could easily be an upset with this Missouri football team because the one thing that this team has, where the places where they lack talent, is a ton of heart. Again, you've got to appreciate that just as a football fan. So I think Kentucky wins the football game, and I hope they continue to have success in the SEC just to see someone different doing that. But I think it's a Kentucky win.
Well, let's talk about one more game before we got to wrap it up and put a bow on it. Washington State, number 14, doesn't get a lot of love when it comes to the committee. They're playing number 24, Stanford. A lot of people think Stanford could beat Washington State. Washington State needs this win. I do think that they could go to Stanford and get a win.
I do too, because we've seen Stanford in a couple of games this year just play absolutely terrible. It's like the team just didn't show up, which is weird to say when you've got a guy who's considered to be a first-round draft pick on offense, and it was a Heisman contender at one point. There's just I can't explain a couple of these games where Stanford's just disappeared to, and Washington State hit a bump in the road a minute back, but they're another team that's a very fun offense. They're fun to watch, and not a lot of people know about them because they play, on the West Coast, and so they're not talked about too much. And I think that does hurt a lot of the Pac-12 teams. Is the lack of hype that they get because of where they play, because there is such an bias when it comes to sports media. But you're right. I mean, this Washington State team is a very fun team, and I agree. I think they get the win today against Stanford.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Absolutely. Well, let's wrap it up and put a bow on it. Thumbs up or thumbs down? The Dodgers tie up the series tonight.
I'm going to say thumbs down, and the only reason is because I believe that Boston's bench is deeper